I'm Sam Connell. I'm one of the librarians at New Canaan Library. And tonight we're going to hear about our water supply, understanding the need to conserve this precious resource. So this webinar was organized by Planet New Canaan and the Town of New Canaan in collaboration with New Canaan Library. I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Michaela Porter.
Thank you, Sam. And thank you to the library for hosting us and always for your programming around sustainability and environmental stewardship. I am with Planet New Canaan tonight, and together with our partners, we're pleased to bring you Jeff Ulrich, Aquarion's Vice President of Supply and Sustainability. He's here to talk to us about our water supply and why we're being asked to conserve it. So where does our water come from? How much do we use? Why is there a mandatory irrigation schedule in Southwest Fairfield County? Jeff's going to tell us all about it. He's worked in the water industry for over 30 years and at Aquarion oversees 85 people who produce drinking water for over 625,000 of us here in Connecticut. He received his Bachelor of Civil Engineering from Villanova University and a Master's of Science from Rutgers. He is a licensed professional engineer, and we welcome him here tonight. Thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present. Water conservation is something that we do take seriously and we feel very strongly about. It's really an important part to really providing a valuable resource to society. And a big part of the conversation is around just the most appropriate uses of water. There's only so much water. We deliver water, like was said, to over 600,000 people every day. And there's a lot of different needs. There's business needs, there's around the house, there's sewage, there's showering, there's cooking, there's fire protection. There's a lot of needs for water. And we're just trying to find what we think is the most equitable balance of the water use. And I'm hopeful at the end of this, you understand why we've made some of the decisions we have, and I'm hopeful you'll be supportive of those decisions with yourself and with your neighbors and friends as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh. There we go. So first thing, just kind of catch everybody's attention again. Looking back at the fall of 2016, we have over 20 reservoirs in the state of Connecticut that serve our different systems. We have a number of them north of the Merritt, running from all the way from Greenwich up into Shelton. And this reservoir is the Barge Reservoir. It's in Stanford, and it provides water to Greenwich. We pump water from it over to the Putnam plant, which you can see from the Merritt, and then also it flows down the Merritt River, the Mianus River to Old Greenwich, where we have a Mianus treatment plant. But as you can see, what it normally looks like when it's full is up there on the left, and what it looked like in the fall of 2016 is there, the picture on the right. Really an uncomfortable place to be as a water operator when you have so many people depending on that resource. And just so to kind of look at this is the Southwest Fairfield County. The four towns down here, we've kind of grouped the four towns because they're really a regional, we look at it as a regional water supply. You have Greenwich, which has a couple reservoirs in it. It's got the Putnam Reservoir, which is, you can see from the Merritt. I'm trying to use my mouse here, hopefully you can see it. Then there's a Rockwood Reservoir nearby. Actually, the Barge Reservoir that they use a lot of as well is in Stanford. Stanford has the North Stanford Reservoir here where our treatment plant is, and then up here is Laurel, which is actually partially in New Canaan. And then what you see is this blue line that comes down, and that's our regional pipeline. New Canaan doesn't get any water from New Canaan itself. There's no water supply in New Canaan. All of the water for New Canaan comes from our Bridgeport water system. So we bring it down from our treatment plants primarily in Fairfield. And the same thing with Darien. Darien does get some water from Stanford, but most of the water that serves Darien, particularly in the summertime, also comes down that regional pipeline and is also coming from Bridgeport. So, Greenwich and Stanford have their own reservoirs. They don't fully support them at all times, so that regional pipeline brings water down. But in addition to that, New Canaan and Darien is dependent on that pipeline as well. So this is going back to 2016, just to give you a little of the backstory. So this is a reservoir curve. These are on our website. You can see what our reservoirs look like down in Southwest Fairfield County every week. They're posted every Friday. And what this shows is through the year across the bottom from January 1st to December, what the level of our reservoir is as we're going through the year. The green line represents the 20-year average. So how, where the reservoir generally is that time of year when you average out the 20 years. The colored lines are what used to be our drought curves. We don't use those any longer. We've modified our drought curves to take advantage of some computer modeling, but that's what we were using at the time to measure our, to determine when we had to start putting into place certain restrictions. And the dashed blue line was what had happened in 2015, and the solid blue line is where we were in 2016. So in 2016, the beginning of June, we were right at normal levels for our reservoir, right in the green line, beginning of June, going into the summer. So it looked like, we had the potential of it being a very normal year. In addition to that, we use Reservoir Forecasts. So what we do is we take 100 years of rainfall data, and we start at a point where the reservoir is right now, and we run a forecast out of, over the next year, if we got the different rainfall that we've gotten over the last 100 years, what is the likelihood of where our reservoir is going to be? And so we create this, the consultant we work with develops this plot. And what it basically shows you at the bottom, that red line is the absolute worst condition that we could anticipate based on the 100+ years of rainfall data. And all the way at the top, the blue line at the top is the absolute best condition. The green line in the middle is what they would expect to have, and that's the 50-50%. But you can see on this, hitting a drought curve, the different colors represent the different percent likelihoods. And that light green that's hitting into the drought curves, that's a 10 to 25%. So somewhere around 10 to 20, 15, 20% likelihood, a 1 in 5, 1 in 6 likelihood that we are going to hit our drought curves, when we were looking at it that first week of June or so. And then we run these on primarily on a 2-week basis in the summertime to keep an eye on things. And then if we do see things going badly, we'll start increasing the repetition of those and start doing them every week. So what we did do is we started going down pretty steeply in the Greenwich system. It was a pretty dry year that year. And you can see, that blue line is dropping pretty steeply. And we issued our first request for voluntary restrictions in the second week of July. So we put out a request through the press and through our website, and even through contacting the towns, saying, we're asking everybody to, start cutting back on their water use because we're starting to see this curve drop pretty quickly. Then around the middle of August, about a month later, that line continued to drop. We put out another request. We went and met with all the mayors of all 4 towns, told them that we were concerned with what was going on with the water supply at that point. And we wanted to make a stronger statement. So the towns put out notices as well. And we put out what we call a code red. We did a reverse phone call to all of our customers, asking them to reduce their water use to 2 days per week. And we got to about a couple weeks later, around the beginning of September, the lines continuing to drop. We did a repeat. We contacted the towns again, asked them to reinforce the need to cut their water use to 2 days a week, as well as putting out that code red, that phone call to the customers, asking them to cut back their water use as well. And finally, we got to the middle of September, and we imposed an outdoor water ban. And that's because we were getting concerned how steep this was going. And the likelihood was if we started hitting those curves, we weren't going to hit one of them. We were going to go through several of the curves. And what you can see, the curve definitely flattened out once we imposed that outdoor water ban. So you can see that it does have a big impact. The other thing that we learned on that, that dashed blue line is the 2016 now. This is from the following year. But those 4 lines, you can see all of those requests for outdoor restrictions, really, the voluntary restrictions really had no impact. That line continued on the same trajectory. And the line really didn't change until we imposed the outdoor water ban. Another way of looking at it, this is looking at the different towns that we serve. So each color represents a different town. Gray at the bottom is New Canaan. That's how much water we deliver every day. to New Canaan. The graph across the bottom is days of the week. Yellow is Darien. Purple was how much water we sell to Suez. Green is how much is going to Greenwich, and blue is how much is going to Stanford. And what you can see is when we imposed that outdoor water ban, all the towns had pretty high usage. The Greenwich and Stanfords were up in the 18 million gallons a day. Darien was in the range of almost 5 million gallons a day. Even New Canaan was above 2.5 million gallons a day. But when you saw is you could see that within a couple of weeks, those demands in some cases were down to half what their demands were. So it really just reinforced the fact how much of our demand in that area is outdoor water use. So we realized water conservation was going to be an important part of the solution. We also realized the reservoirs were still very low. This is now still the fall of 2016, and we really didn't know how much they would recover going into 2017. So we realized that we needed to make some changes and get prepared for the following year. But we had already kind of started down the road of water conservation. Southwest Fairfield County demands have been increasing, or at least it's always been a stretch down there to meet the demands in the 4 towns. So we have been starting to talk about, we were developing a plan to bring more water down our regional pipeline. That project has been going on for a couple of years, and we are going for a permit right now to expand that capacity to bring more water down that regional pipeline to the 4 towns. Another thing that's out there that we were aware of is stream flow regulations. So the state imposed regulations, and what they do is they require us to release more water from our reservoirs in order to improve the water quality downstream of our reservoirs, the ecology of those streams. It sounds like a really beneficial thing, and we're supportive of it as well. But out of that, when you release more water from your reservoirs, you have less water in your reservoirs. So across the state, we have about 100 million gallons a day of safe yield. We're going to, as part of those regulations, we're going to lose about 15 million gallons a day. So, but they were about 10 years out, so we knew we had some time to plan for that. But we knew that was another significant impact that was coming, that was also going to reinforce the need for water conservation to help us meet those demands as we lost more water in our reservoirs. So we had started in 2015, the year before 2016, we had done a water use study with a woman named Amy Vickers, who's kind of the nationally known water conservation expert. She's written a book called Water Conservation. And if you go to most of the major water conferences, she's generally one of the lead speakers around water conservation. What we had learned from that study was that the average use of our customer, well, across the country, the average use is 83 gallons per person per day, per capita per day. In Connecticut, I'm sorry, that's the Connecticut average. Connecticut average is 83 gallons per person today. The US average is 88. So the Connecticut average was slightly lower than the national average. But there were 7 systems that were above the national average. All the 4 towns in Southwest Fairfield County, as well as a few others, but all 4 towns, Greenwich, Stanford, New Canaan, and Darien, were all above, and in some cases significantly above that 88 gallons per capita. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we also realized is our high users are very high users. The top 1% of our customers use almost 700 gallons a day per person. Now they're not using that water in the wintertime. It's almost all in the summertime. So it really is, when you think about it, and that's not across the whole year, that's just across 6 months, you really can double that in the summertime. So there's people in our system that are using on the order of 1,400, 1,500 gallons a day per person house. So if they have 3 or 4 people in the house, they might be using 5,000 or 6,000 gallons a day of water in their per day in the summertime. But the other thing we learned is that the bottom 50% of our customers are very low users. They're only 50% of our customers, half of our customers in the state, only use 37 gallons a day per person. So what we really realized was there are a lot of, the majority of our customers are actually pretty efficient with their water use. It's really our high-end users that are causing a lot of this problem. And this kind of reinforces it. We'll look at New Canaan in a second, but this is the 4 towns. There's a lot of information on this graph, so I'll do my best to try to go through it. But each bar, if you look across from the left going to the right, each bar represents a portion of the population. So this is the 4 towns of Greenwich, Stanford, Darien, and New Canaan. The blue represents indoor water use. The red represents outdoor water use. And then if you look at that green line, it represents how much of each bar represents the total water use for that, of the whole, the total water use of the whole group of people. So, going from the left, the average of all the customers, you can see they're using, on the order of 350, 400 gallons a day per household. That represents 100% of the water use. Next one is the top 1%. So our top 1% of our customers in the 4 towns are using over 2,200 gallons a day of water average. Again, you can see how much of that is outdoor water use, how much of it is indoor, and you can really double that in the summertime because they're only using that outdoor water use in the summertime. So it's spread out over this calculation, it's spread out over the whole year. So it's really probably closer to that. So you're closer to 4,400, 4,500 gallons a day per person. And you can also see that 7%, the top 1% of our customers are using 7% of the water that's used in the 4 towns. You go to the next bar, that's the top 10% of our customers. The top 10% of our customers are using 33% of the water. So using 3 times what they represent from a population perspective. And then you can go to the next one, the top 25%, they're using 56% of the water used in the 4 towns. So again, more than double what they represent from a population perspective. But you look all the way to the right over there, that's the bottom 50%. The bottom 50% of the customers in the 4 towns are only using 21% of the water. So half of the customers are not creating a problem at all. It's really that top 25% of our customers that are really using a very high amount of water use. They're really creating the stress on the system that everybody else has to respond to. And that outdoor water ban, just so you understand, the outdoor water ban is not something we enjoy imposing. It has, we learned, and we were always aware of it, but you really learn once you impose it, has a big impact on everybody. It affects a lot of businesses. It affects, nurseries, irrigation contractors, power washers, car washes, pool pool installers, all kinds of businesses are impacted by putting that water ban into effect. So really this, top 25% of the customers are if they stress the system to the point that that we have to do an outdoor water ban, it really has a huge impact on a significant number of businesses in the area as well. Next page is New Canaan. And what's interesting about this, it's almost exactly the same curve as the 4 towns. So New Canaan is really, just a small representation, but it's the same thing. That top 1% is using 6% of the water. The top 10% is using 32% of the water. Top 25% is using 56% of the water. And again, that bottom 50% is using only 21% of the water. So it's really that top 25% of our customers that are really using the significantly more water than they represent from a population perspective. So what we found was most customers, like I said, are water efficient. More than, at least 50% of our customers are very low users. Some small numbers of users in each customer class are very large users. And we saw that outdoor water use offered the largest potential. You could see how much the outdoor water use represented on those red versus blue of the total water use. So we decided at the time the conservation efforts should be focused on the very high and high users in each customer class. But you have to remember, this is also around December now that we're doing this, so it needed to be implemented in 5 months because we really weren't sure if our reservoir is going to recover in time for the spring of 2017. So what we decided to do, we looked at a couple different options, particularly outdoor water use. There were some studies out there that showed that 3 day a week had, going to 3 days a week has no benefit whatsoever. In a lot of cases, people use more water when they're restricted to 3 days a week, just because people will water that. If it's a Friday and they can water and they're afraid it's not going to rain on Saturday or Sunday, they're going to water on Friday, even though they may not need it. Really, to get the benefit of reducing outdoor water use, you needed to go to 2 day a week restrictions. So we decided to do that. We looked around the country trying to find other programs that had been implemented and that were successful. And we ended up being connected with Dallas, Texas. So down in Texas, they had implemented the 2-day-a-week irrigation program about 5 years before this, so like 2012, and they had had good success. And so we kind of took them as a guidance and took what they learned from their experiences and tried to apply it to our program. And just to give an idea of what Dallas, we even had them come up at one point and make a presentation to the towns and the regulators. In Connecticut, we get about 48 inches of rain a year. In Dallas, Texas, they get 28 inches of rain a year. So on the order of half the rainfall. In addition to that, in the summertime, their average temperature is 92 degrees, ours is 82 degrees. So it's 10 degrees warmer and they get about half the rainfall. And they basically, when they looked at ours, the rainfall we have and the amount of rainfall we have and the temperature, they said, if we can impose 2-day-a-week restrictions down in Texas, there should be no issue with putting it in place in Connecticut. So what the policy has is it's 2 days a week maximum. Even addresses can water on Sundays and Wednesdays. Odd addresses can water on Saturdays and Tuesdays. It only applies to automatic buried irrigation systems, the ones that you have irrigation contractors for, or sprinklers that are like at the end of the hoses unattended, that are just spraying an area of the grass. It does not apply to handheld watering. It doesn't apply to drip irrigation, and it does not apply to soaker hoses. So people can do all that stuff as much as they need to maintain their plantings and their bushes. We're just trying to really control that automatic, because a lot of people, what happens is they set the irrigation systems. They've already been set. We can see it already. Our demands are going up already in April. That irrigation systems are already going off at 4 o'clock in the morning when it's 60 degrees and we've gotten rain a couple days this week. We do have a variance process. So, there are a couple variances. There's one for new plantings. So if you did put new plantings in, you can just go to our website, fill out the information, and you get a 5-week exemption so you can establish that, that new planting. In addition to that, if you get to the end of 5 weeks and you'd like a little more, you can go right back to the website and extend it another 2 weeks. So we understand that people have new plantings and people are doing landscaping, and we're giving them that ability to do that as well. There's also a large property variance. If you have a minimum of 2 acres, what we learned from Dallas, Texas, is they said that they could not. There were just situations where people can't water more than 2 acres in one day. They need more days than that to get through all their zones. So if you have larger property than that, you can request a variance. It requires working with your irrigation contractor, having them work with us and submit calculations. We do have a consultant that goes out and does an inspection just to make sure that the system is up to current standards. And what we require is to be part of the program is that you reduce your water use 15% from what you were using in 2015. Essentially, we're expecting 10 to 15% savings from the people that are complying with the 2-day-a-week restrictions. So we're asking the large properties to meet that same expectation, working with the irrigation contractor to do that. And I'll be honest, in all the couple of years we've been doing this, very few customers have not been able to do that. And then we ask the permit to be posted on site so your neighbors can see it, because we do get calls from neighbors wondering why people are being able to water outside the schedule. And the third variance we offer is a high efficiency. And that's if, even if you have a small lot, medium-sized lot or large, if you have a weather-based controller that's using like a local weather station to make decisions about turning on or turning off, and those types of things, and you're working with the irrigation contractor, same type of thing. We do a site inspection, but in that case, we're asking for a 20% savings. And talking to irrigation contractors, they feel pretty confident that customers should be able to get as much as a 40% savings if they're using a really well-designed high efficiency controller. And again, all of this can be applied through our Aquarion website. So how have we been doing? The good example I like to look at, now we have is last year compared to 2016. So if you look at this is bars that represent years. All the way to the left is 2010 to 2015. The second set of bars is 2016 and 17, 18, 19, and 20. The red represents the amount of rainfall that we received between May and August in Greenwich, and the green is the number of rain days. And if you look at 2016, which is the second set of bars here, you can see where they got rainfall in red and number of rain days in green. And over here in 2020, you can see what we got. And actually, between May and August in 2020, we had less rainfall and fewer rain days than we did in 2016. So it's a nice comparison. We didn't have any restrictions in 2016, and we did have the restrictions into the 2-day-a-week irrigation restrictions in 2020. And so here's some of the savings, you can see from the savings, on this is the different years, how much water, how much rainfall we received. So you can see amount of rainfall. And then you can see southwest, that SWFC is how much water was going down to serve the 4 towns during those years between May and August. And all the way to the right is Greenwich. And I'll explain that in a sec why I'm looking at that. But if you look at the yellow bar, the difference from 2016, the 2020 difference to 2016, we only had almost 1.8 inches less rainfall in Greenwich in that May to August time period. The 4 towns were using an average of almost 4.5 million gallons a day less than we used in 2016. So we used almost 550 million gallons less water in the 4 towns between May and August in 2020 than we did in 2016, with less rainfall and fewer rain days. And just in Greenwich alone was almost 173 million gallons of savings, which represents 5% of the Greenwich storage. And so you have to understand why that's important. So this is back to that reservoir curve. That green line represents the 20-year average. That gold dashed line is 2016, what happened to the reservoir in 2016. Well, the blue line is what happened in 2020. And what you can see is there's a difference there. And that difference we can really attribute to that 170 million gallons of savings in the Greenwich system from the summer. In addition to that, what you don't, is in 2016, we imposed an outdoor water ban in mid-September. That had a big impact on businesses, and it still flattened out that line. So that line would have even gone lower. There would have been even a bigger difference if we had not imposed that outdoor water ban. So even with an outdoor water ban, we were able to keep our reservoirs up, to the point that we didn't have to impose that outdoor water ban to have that big impact on all of our customers and all the businesses. So just kind of looking at, from other perspectives, here's like days of the week. So the groups of bars from the left goes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And the different color bars, different representative years. So the blue on the left is 2010 to 2015. The red is 2016, that drought year. And then the green, purple, and blue are 2017, 2018, 2019. And when you look at this graph, you can see that the 4 towns have used every single day since we've imposed those restrictions noticeably less water than they did in 2010 to 2015 and 2016. So there's been a significant savings. In addition to that, you can see that the ones that are circled, our high days used to be, you can see under the old bars, were Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because that was when most irrigation contractors set their irrigation systems. We've had a change where now the irrigation days, the higher days, are Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, which are the irrigation days. Similar in New Canaan, you can see that across the days of the week, every day of the week is using less water than it did in 2010 and 15, as well as 2016. And again, also the peak days now have changed from what they used to be, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, to Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. But something we are a little concerned about is 2020. I think, the irrigation restrictions have been in place for a couple of years now. I think the 2016 drought was wearing off a little bit. In addition to that, you had COVID, where a lot of people were home, a lot of people did work on their houses, and a lot of people wanted to make sure that anything they planted and stuff survived. And what you can see is now that orange is the 2020. This is the 4 towns, and you can basically see it went up across the board. It's higher than the 3 previous years. So there is a little concern on our part. Are we reverting to some of our old behaviors? And similar in New Canaan as well. You can see those orange bars on Sunday have almost gotten back to what they were prior to the restrictions. And every single day was higher than they had been the last couple of years, and noticeably higher than they had been the last couple of years. So again, a little concerned about what, if there is kind of reverting back to some of our old behaviors, not only in New Canaan, but across the 4 towns. And here's another way of looking at it. And this, so this is on our website as well. It's up on every Friday. What this shows is daily demand. And right now we're just looking at New Canaan. But the orange bar, the orange lines are the average for the month for 2010 to 2015. So you can see the average bar for January, February, March, every single month. That's the average for the month. And what you can see is 2016 is the blue. You can see how high the water demand was in New Canaan in 2016, well above the average through most of the summer. Even starting as early as mid-April, the demands were well above normal. I'm sorry, mid-May, the demands were well above normal in New Canaan in 2016. 2019 is the green line. And what you can see is it stayed, with the restrictions in place in 2019, we stayed below that line all the way into, August. And even in August, we were pretty much, if you took out the average, we were probably at or below that line and even into the fall. So the restrictions had a positive impact. But again, if you look at that purple line, you can see in 2020, those demands got way up there and we're way up in that range of the 2016 demands as well. We did save water in New Canaan, but not nearly as much as we have the last couple of years. And the other thing that's out there is, and just to be aware, is, like I pointed out before, more than 50% of our customers are very water efficient. There's a lot of people that really feel strongly about, trying to protect that resource and not use it unnecessarily. And so when we put the restrictions in place, a lot of people are very supportive of that. And just so you know that there are, like I said, 50% of the customers are low users, and we get, a lot of notes about the customers, from their neighbors wondering why they're being allowed to water so much. So there is a strong sentiment out there. I was expecting when we first imposed this a couple of years ago, we did a lot of presentations at different men's clubs and different associations and groups and libraries over the couple months when we were imposing this. And I was expecting a lot of pushback from the attendees. But generally, I found when we put this data up and we showed them how much of the water use is really focused on a very small portion of the customers, I'd say 80–85% of the people understood why we were doing it and supported us moving ahead with it. But so you can see we do get these kind of emails on a regular basis from customers upset that they have got neighbors who are not following the restrictions or outright ignoring them, and in their minds wasting a very valuable resource. Another thing coming in just in preparation discussion for this year, this is last, NOAA and the Weather Service put out their projections of what's going on. And right now, the whole state of Connecticut has been identified as being abnormally dry. It seems like it's rained a little bit lately, but it was pretty dry through the winter. So our stream flows are lower than normal for this time of year. And it's been noted at the national level. This is a map that's taken off of the whole country, and they've identified Connecticut as being abnormally dry going into the summer. In addition to that, our reservoir curves, like we showed before, up in the upper left is our Stanford Reservoirs. That green line is the 20-year average. That gold dashed line is 2016. And the solid blue is this year. Normally we spill in Stanford. You can see that on the blue dashed line. We didn't spill in 2016, but you can see that blue line right now where we are in 2021. It doesn't even look like we're going to get to the point that we did in 2016. So it's unlikely that Stanford's going to spill. It's not going to be full going into the summertime. And in addition to that, unless we get about a significant rainfall, like 3 inches, we don't expect that to spill. So we're going into the summer with us below normal levels in the Stanford Reservoir. And also, if you look down on the right, the Greenwich, again, that green line is the 20-year average. The dashed is 2016. 2016, the reservoir spilled. And most years, almost every year, the Greenwich Reservoir spill. And you can see, again, that blue line, it looks like we might get close to spilling, but if we do spill, it won't be very long. So the reservoirs are, the state, the National Weather Service has pointed out that Connecticut is abnormally dry. We've seen it in the behavior of our reservoirs. Our Bridgeport system is full. All of our other reservoir systems are full and spilling, but our Stanford and Greenwich systems are still struggling to fill and spill. So it looks like we are going to be going into the summer without our full volume of supply. So just kind of in summary, the outcomes of the 2-day-a-week restrictions. In some parts of the state, irrigation has become pervasive. We see that, there are still a lot of irrigation systems going in on a yearly basis. We talk to the irrigation contractors, they're still going in. And we're starting to see a move out of the four towns. So even up in areas like Monroe and Shelton, where we historically have never had irrigation, more and more people are starting to put irrigation systems into those areas as well. We found that the voluntary restrictions are ineffective, like we showed on that graph. Asking for voluntary restrictions, I think most people assume that their neighbors are going to do it and they don't have to worry about doing it. And as we saw 4 notices and really had no impact on the demand of the customers. We think through all this process, we have a better understanding of the everyday water use. Like I said, most of our customers are water efficient, but there are a small number of users in each customer class that are very large users. And we still think outdoor water use offers the largest potential for savings. The other thing I really want to point out is the grass will survive. 2-day-a-week watering is more than enough. If we get 48 inches of rain a year, that's essentially an inch a week on average. Most irrigation systems are set to irrigate 1 inch per week. So, in most cases, we almost have enough rainfall without any need for irrigation. And even talking to the irrigation contractors, even they, in a lot of cases, would admit you really don't even have to turn your irrigation system on until the beginning of June. You should be able to get through April and May without even turning it on. And that's part of our issue is a lot of the systems get turned on in April and people are watering now 2 or 3 days a week in April. That's water that we could have in our reservoirs. It's not going to be in our reservoirs when we need it in the summertime. And there really isn't that need. The grass doesn't need that much water this time of year. It's 60 degrees right now during the day, 50 degrees at night. It doesn't have that demand. Overall, we, again, like it was explained at the beginning, we think it's the right thing to do. We think, in looking at the balance of water use, to be using the amount of water that we do for outdoor and watering grass seems like it's, out of alignment with all the other needs that we have. And it does require us to go into these droughts that have a significant impact on all the customers and particularly the businesses. And that's really our goal, is to reduce the potential for future droughts. Another one is we do think the demand management has helped. We've seen an average of about 700 million gallons a day of savings in the 4 towns over each summer. It's had a positive impact on the reservoirs, like I demonstrated in Greenwich. We are concerned about if we're returning to some old habits in 2020, and we are going into 2021 below 100%. So we are a little concerned, and we're hopeful people will take this seriously going into this year. Just a reminder about the 2-day-a-week restrictions. It's even addresses on Sundays and Wednesdays, odd addresses on Saturdays and Tuesdays. It only applies to automatic and buried irrigation systems and hose and sprinklers that are end of hoses. It does not apply to handheld watering, going around and watering pots or watering individual bushes. Does not apply to drip irrigation or soaker hoses. And there is the variances that you can go for if you want to water outside the schedule. So that's hopefully everybody received this card. We sent this out, I think, in the last couple of weeks as a reminder about the restrictions. And like I said, we think the program's been successful. We think it's in the best interest of everybody to support it. And hopefully I've been able to explain why, a little bit about our water system, how we got here, and what we're doing to try to manage it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. We're going to jump right in because we have a lot of questions from people, as you can imagine, some questions and some comments. I'm going to paraphrase here. I think Alexander Hamilton said, a law without penalty of enforcement is really just a suggestion. Yep. So what about these higher users that are stressing the system? What are the consequences for them? Can you charge them higher rates? Can you charge them a fine?
So we do have people going around in the mornings, and we identify people that are watering outside the schedule, and we do send them letters and contact them. I would say 80% of the people that we send letters to end up, in most cases, calling us and trying to argue that they aren't outside the schedule, but our guys take pictures and they'll have a picture of their mailbox with the sprinklers in the background. So So it usually stops the conversation. And what we found when we go back and check, most of the people are complying. But there are a few customers that challenge us every year. Our ultimate goal is to, we ultimately can shut off. We have that ability to shut them off if they continue to ignore the restrictions. We don't really want to do that. We just prefer people agree. We don't have the ability to fine at this point. The way our rate, we have to get that approved through a PURA, through a rate case. We are intending to go into a rate case in the next year or so, and that would be part of a rate case to allow us to do some kind of fines. But I have worked with other towns or talked to other towns that do have fines, and even Dallas, Texas said it. I think they said that they had Ross Perot as one of their customers, and they sent him a fine for like $75, and he just basically kept watering. So there are some customers that the fines won't have any impact on whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What would Alexander Hamilton say about that? Okay, we have two questions regarding wells, which I know it can be confusing to people. Yep. The first well question is, are the individual wells for homes proportional to the reservoir supplies, or are they independent? And the second one is, can you relate the information you just shared with us to households that have wells for water, as is true in many New Canaan homes?
Yeah. So I'll try my best. And so the reservoirs are indicative of the overall water supply. It's really dependent on the streams, but generally the wells will be in a better shape than the reservoirs for a longer period of time. But if the reservoirs are down for an extended period of time, you will start to see it in the wells, because that means the stream flows have been down a substantial amount of time. And if the stream flows have been down for a substantial amount of time, that means they're draining the groundwater sources as well. So in general, the groundwater sources follow the reservoirs. The reservoirs will probably be a month or two ahead of the wells, but they are indicative that if the conditions continue, the wells will eventually have the same problem that the reservoirs are having. And your question about I didn't quite understand the question about the well sources in New Canaan.
Well, I think people are wondering that if they have a well, for domestic water use, how does that affect the water table and the reservoir levels?
Because the wells in New Canaan won't have much impact on our reservoirs. Most of our reservoirs, the runoff to them is coming from upstream. So like in the case of a barge reservoir, which is on the edge of Stanford there, a lot of the runoff is actually coming from New York State. Even the Laurel Reservoir, which is in the corner of New Canaan, a lot of that runoff is coming in from just the corners of New Canaan. So generally the wells in New Canaan, Stanford, Greenwich, are downstream of our reservoirs and won't have an impact on our reservoirs.
So we have a question from a New Canaan high school student.
Okay.
What can the high school do, or more generally high schools or schools do to conserve water?
Well, I think the big thing that schools really benefit that they have, well, it's around the school board, is low volume toilets, faucets. They have a huge impact. Also broken, if a student sees, you have the flushometer toilets where you push them and they'll keep running. If that happens, you jiggle it to make it stop, because that water running is gallons and gallons and gallons. For instance, some people will leave them running for hours, or let the janitor know that there's an issue in one of the bathrooms. But the low flow toilets offer huge savings, particularly in schools, hospitals, hotels, because when you take into account a number of toilets that are in those facilities and the amount of times they're being used, they offer significant savings. Otherwise, from the student perspective, it's hard in school. That's probably by far the largest water use is the bathroom water use. So anything they can do, when they're washing their hands, not run the water while they're soaping their hands, things like that. Anything to minimize that, because there is a lot of water use in high schools that's associated with the use of the bathrooms.
What is the individual town's role in this 2-day-a-week irrigation program?
Well, we really enforce it. We have the authority to enforce it. That's granted to us by PURA. that we can enforce the water restrictions that we think are in the best interest of the water system. What we do at Greenwich has a ordinance that is supportive, and so they impose the same restrictions on the well owners as us. And we can't enforce it on the well owners, but we would like the well owners to follow the same irrigation schedule, because it kind of puts everybody into the same boat, and it kind of eliminates that break of why are they allowed to water and I'm not allowed to water. But we're really primarily asking the towns to support us, put it on their websites, put it in their newsletters, and just reminders of things like that to just keep the message out there. Because it's still amazing to me how often we still get lots of phone calls in March every year asking, are we going to have restrictions again this year? And the message we want out there is, no, the restrictions are here permanently. The 2-day-a-week restrictions are here to stay. It's a water management strategy we think is really in the best interest of everybody.
Okay, so this is permanent. Is the 20-year average changing?
Well, yeah, the 20-year average is definitely changing. So we should see that reservoir curve improve over time. So that's the benefit of that, is hopefully get those reservoirs to higher levels more often and get them spilling more often, and also reduce reduce how low they're getting in the summertime. That's really the biggest benefit. So that should improve over time.
Okay, so we have a question from a Norwalk viewer. Where does Norwalk get its water from? And connected to this, why are some of the towns that Aquarion serves in the program, but not all of them?
Okay, so Norwalk has its own water supply. They've got their own reservoir, kind of intermixed with ours. We have a number along the Merritt, and they've got their own in Merritt. I think it's in Wilton. I don't remember exactly the town, which one theirs is in, but they've got their own reservoir in their treatment plant, and they bring the water into Norwalk just like we do. We do have an interconnection with Norwalk, and Norwalk does take water from us at times if they're struggling. Last year they did take some water from us because they were having some issues with their reservoir, and they have taken water from us in the past. So it's an interconnected system that we can support if we need to. Why other towns? So really we focused on our highest users. We said that when we did our study, we identified 7 towns that were above the national average. The 4 were Stanford, Greenwich, New Canaan, and Darien. We expanded to Westport the next year because Westport was up in that same grouping. We also expanded to Newtown because Newtown was supportive of irrigation restrictions, and they had some big condominium complexes that were really putting a high demand on that system. This year we're expanding to Simsbury. Simsbury is one of our high user towns as well. And I guess one thing I forgot to mention on the one graph where I showed the daily water use, in the winter time, the demand in New Canaan, I don't remember off the top of my head, it's like on the order of 0.7, 0.8 million gallons a day. It gets to 2.5 million gallons a day in the summertime. That's a peaking factor of 3. That's a very high peaking. I mean, what we call that is how much is your water use increasing in the summertime compared to your wintertime. That's a peaking factor. We have to design around that. A peaking factor of 3 is really a very high peaking factor in the industry. Generally, it's around 2. So to be at 3 is a very high peak factor. Simsbury also has a high peaking factor, so we're imposing it there as well. We intend to expand it to Fairfield next year. They're in the next grouping of towns that have high water use. Our ultimate goal is over the next 5 years, we'll expand it to all customers, the 2-day-a-week restrictions to all of our customers statewide. But we're kind of going town by town, kind of taking them in order of their water use.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, another question, businesses are very high water users, yes or no? What percentage of high users are business customers?
Well, our biggest users are the businesses. The biggest customers we have are some of the big industries or hotels or office complexes that we have in the area. But the thing that we do see with them, we have done audits, so we look for opportunities. There is some water savings there, but generally the water bill is a pretty good sized bill for them as well. So they've kind of looked for opportunities to do water savings as well, because they're looking to save that water if it represents
it's their bottom line. They want to save money.
If it represents a couple $100,000 a year to them of cost, they're going to try to get that back. So we find they've already implemented a lot of things themselves, some of the low efficiency stuff already. And what you see is their peaking water use in the summertime it doesn't peak up nearly as much as the residential water use. It may go up some because they may have some planting outside or some some landscaping outside, but it doesn't go up, it doesn't double and triple the way our residential demands do. So there is some opportunity there, but really we find that most businesses are trying to be water efficient, and they really don't have the increases in the summertime that our residential customers do. And also the towns in this area, residential water use is by far the biggest grouping of water use in the 4 towns.
Okay. In your graphs, like when you started at the beginning of the presentation, we were looking at data from 2016, and then we kind of hopped to 2020. So we weren't really hearing about this issue for a while until now. Is there a reason for that sort of pause?
Well, I think we have. We've been sending out the cards every year. We've been meeting with the irrigation contractors every year. We have had drivers every year going out and contacting customers with letters. So probably maybe people didn't hear about it so much because they were complying, or they're working with irrigation contractors to comply. The reasons
But didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to hear it.
But the reason it's probably coming up a little more now is we do have a permit in. It's been in the news a little bit, so there's a little more conversation about why are we bringing this water down to this end of the state. And in addition to that, we did see the demands pop up last year, and we're a little concerned of are people getting a little comfortable, kind of forgetting about 2016 and thinking, oh, it wasn't that big a deal, and we can go back to our normal water use. Like I said, we still get a lot of calls asking, are water restrictions still in place again this year? And so we think there's some more, increasing the messaging again, because we think there might be a little wearing out of the message.
So we have some questions about water recycling,
Yep.
Capturing shower water to water plants, dishwashers. A question actually about dishwashers. Do dishwashers use less water than hand washing dishes? Yeah. Is there a way for us to reuse water? I think someone said here car washes reuse water.
Yep. So car washes do use water. I mean, it's a little complicated to reuse like water from inside the house, just because you've got to redo your piping and direct it somewhere. And in addition to that, there's always the potential of something getting in there that you may not want to reuse in some way, shape, or form. Dishwashers are more efficient. I think, on average, a dishwasher will only use 3 or 4 gallons of water in a full dishwasher cycle, because again, they're spraying that water round and round, and a faucet running 2 minutes can, you definitely use more than 4 gallons. So, the dishwasher is more efficient. So filling your dishwasher and running it once a day or once every 2 days is more efficient than doing hand washing. The one thing we do have is we do have a water barrel program. So you can purchase water barrels through us at a discounted rate. And what you do is you put them on off your roof leaders, and you can put them in you collect it in a rain barrel, and then you can take water from that to water bushes and gardens and things like that. So that's
where do we go? Where do we go to get the water barrel information? Can you put that in the chat?
On our website that you can to sign up to receive those water barrels. And from what I've heard, we've had a banner year this year. We've had more requests than we've had than we've ever had before for the water barrels. So people are taking note of them.
Oh, great. So we have a couple more questions. I want to squeeze them in. We only have 5 minutes left. Have you thought about only allowing automated irrigation from June to August?
We haven't gone that far yet. It's probably worth the conversation. The one issue you have with the irrigation contractors is, in some cases, they have hundreds and maybe even thousands of systems they're trying to turn on. So they want to be able to turn those things on in April and kind of leave them and move on, or then come back in late May. So it may be hard to implement. We would prefer, that people work with the irrigation contractors and not have to impose that strict requirement. But I like I said before, I really think in most Last year was a dry May, I will admit that. The second half of May was a pretty dry May, but that was very unusual. Most years, there's really no need for your irrigation system to be turned on until June. So if people were looking for an opportunity to save water, you look at the amount of water that's used April, May, and even into June when you're watering 3 days a week, when you really don't have to, it's a significant amount of water. So if people could talk to the irrigation contractors and say, yeah, get it set up, but keep it off. And please just come back in June and turn it on June 1st. That would has a lot of potential.
Okay, that's good advice. What about golf courses?
Okay.
What are
Yep.
they doing? What are they doing to conserve?
So we do put all of our golf courses that are in our service area through the large property variance program. So they have to submit calculations to us. They work with our irrigation contractor, our irrigation consultant. He goes out and he investigates their systems to make sure that they are modern, and up to today's standards. And what we found is most of the golf courses recognize they're a sore spot to a lot of people, the amount of water they use, and professionally, and also it's a big part of their bill, So what we found is the irrigation systems that golf courses are generally pretty efficient, and they do a good job of minimizing the water use. But we are working with them. We do send them a monthly report, letting them know how much water use they've used in the past, and compared to that 2015. And again, I think almost all the golf courses continue to meet that expectation of the 15% reduction since compared to what they were using in 2015. So,
Okay.
and the other thing we did find is they don't use as much of our water as you think. What they generally do is they use a lot of their pond water on site, and they won't use our water until their ponds start to struggle. So they're not using as much of our water as people think they are. But again, like I said, they're more efficient they're pretty efficient, and we are sending them a monthly report comparing them to 2015, and they have been meeting that expectation of reducing their water use by 15%.
Well, I think that there's a bunch of people on this call tonight for whom golf courses are sort of the new pornography. But segueing from that into educating people away from lawns and toward more drought tolerant forms of landscaping, native plants. I mean, we, Planet New Canaan, the library, we're all part of the Conservation Commission. We're all part of the pollinator pathway. And, this is a movement. This is a nationwide movement. Are you and Aquarion part of that movement, or?
Well, we're definitely supportive of it. We provide information at times. We are supportive, and we've had presentations on planting and planting options. Lawns, I have to admit, I'm not going to tell someone they can't have a lawn. My biggest issue with the lawn is the lawns are better served by only watering them the 2 days a week. And actually, talking to Texas, we've kept in touch with Dallas, Texas. They're starting to go to 1 day a week. That they're finding that they can go to 1 day a week watering, even in Texas, with their lawns. And what it does is it just forces the roots to go deeper, and they're more able to survive, a period of time without water. So, we support the pollinator pathway. We support going to more native species, but we recognize people do like lawns. We just think they don't need nearly as much water as people think they do.
Well, I just want to tell everybody out there that tonight's program has been recorded. So please tell all your friends about it, share it. I want to thank Jeff Ulrich and Aquarion once again. And always, I want to thank New Canaan Library. We are out of time. It's 8 o'clock. Jeff, thank you so much. We're going to put this presentation up. I believe the Conservation Commission of New Canaan is going to put it up on its website, and we'll all do our best to share it. Thank you so much.
And my name and everything's on the website. So if anybody does have questions afterwards, my email's there. They can send me an email with questions for follow-up if they have to.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Everybody be well. Have a good night.